It's difficult in my generation for me to talk to people about my own psychology, about the things that make me a little bit irregular, a little bit different from other people. Um, the older generation, my parents' generation, was really shaped by Sigmund Freud's philosophy, I guess, to a staggering extent. Um, basic assumptions, like the idea that you can solve your problems by talking about them, that you'll feel better about your problems by talking about them. These are really kind of Freudian myths. Very, very simple things like that, and very simple ideas about the structure of the family, the nature of religion. Those ideas of Freud have influenced people who've never read Freud, people who can't spell Freud. I don't know. I guess my generation was coming up with a slightly different set of assumptions. If you've been following my channel for a while, you may have heard me comment before that I do not feel jealousy. I don't experience jealousy. And it took me a long while to figure out that this is just a psychological irregularity of mine. It's just one of the ways in which I'm different from, the majority of other people. And, it makes it very hard for me in some circumstances to understand what motivates other people, why it is they're doing what they're doing, that sort of thing. Now, if you tell people who are your close personal friends already, or someone who's been your girlfriend for a long time, they may take that with seriousness. They may understand that you're just trying to disclose something about yourself and the way you think, and the way you perceive the world. But obviously, if you're talking to someone who doesn't know you that well, they may think you're boasting. They may think you're making a kind of claim to morality under a Judeo-Christian heading, which I don't believe in, And I mean, I don't see my own lack of this feeling, of this capacity to feel, as an advantage. In many situations, it makes it more difficult for me to understand my fellow human beings around me, because a lot of what they're doing is motivated by jealousy or envy. And I'd say that, what we call jealousy, at bottom, we can also describe as a strange form of sympathy, right? It's a way of understanding other people. Now, again, to me, it really is alien. I don't want to get into too many examples, but there was one example that'll stay with me forever, where I had a coworker who hated me, and I didn't know why, and I couldn't guess why. I just didn't know what her problem was with me. And my very last day at work, she screamed at me. And what it was that she imagined, falsely, that I was getting paid more than she was. This was not true, in fact, but there were reasons why she thought that. There were bits of information she had misinterpreted. And also that what she did with that information, and the way she bitterly, viciously hated me. She really felt jealousy in that sense. And I, if I were in her circumstance, I wouldn't feel that way at all. I remember there was once a lecture from a guy who was actually an ex-Buddhist monk. And since then I found him on the internet. He actually went back to being a Buddhist monk. So at that time he was a layman, but he was a former Buddhist monk, future Buddhist monk. But anyway, this guy gave a lecture at a Buddhist monastery, and he was talking about, jealousy and envy. And everybody in the audience, except for me, was absolutely relating to and digging what he was saying. I mean, he gave this example of a woman. It was a Chinese woman in the example. I mean, obviously, this is a very ethnically mixed crowd, but a lot of Chinese people and some Sri Lankans, some Buddhists from other parts of Asia. And he was giving this example of a woman whose husband came home one day and said that they had to buy a more expensive dishwasher. Why? Because he had found out that some friends of theirs had a more expensive dishwasher than they had. I'm sorry, I'm just correcting. Actually, it was the washing machine for clothes. The clothes washing machine. Anyway, sorry. Distant memory now. And the wife asked, she went to the Buddhist monk for backup and asked, why can't we just be happy for them? And everyone in the crowd except me is completely digging this, completely relating to this as like a major life experience. Going, yeah, yeah. They absolutely know what the monk is talking about. They understand this conflict between husband and wife, and the fact that the wife would go to a Buddhist monk to try to deal with this as an ethical issue. It's completely alien to me. On the one hand, if someone else is doing better than me, I can just feel happy for them. I can also just feel indifference. I can also feel contempt for them, But there's a whole knot of human emotions there that I don't get, that I don't relate to, and where I really have to use my imagination. I have to use logic to try to think the way other people think. And this same guy in the same lecture, this Buddhist monk or former Buddhist monk, he was talking about walking down the street and feeling intense jealousy because other people were better looking than you. Like in particular ways, someone has nicer legs than you or whatever. And like everyone in the audience, way above 90%, they were absolutely on his wavelength and agreeing with him and, vocalizing, saying, yeah, they knew what he was talking about. I was sitting there thinking, what he was describing as a normal, daily occurrence when walking down the street, never once in my life, not as a child, not as a teenager, not as an adult. And this is not about morality. This isn't something I chose. This isn't something I decided. This isn't something I cultivated. This is really just a difference between me and a lot of other human beings, including people within my own family. I just don't think it's a common trait. And I don't know, I assume it's part of my nature, but who knows? Maybe it's a result of, maybe there's some cause and effect to it. I mean, I've mentioned before, I have a very unusual tendency to lucid dreaming. Basically, all of my dreams are lucid, which is to say that while I'm dreaming, I'm aware that it's a dream, that it's not the real world, and I can therefore, if I want to, manipulate and control the false reality of my dreams. That's rare, but that's documented and studied. There are people like that. It's a psychological abnormality. What I was thinking this evening when seeing a lot of behavior on the internet that I consider insane, that from my perspective is insane, but I had to reflect on, maybe there's some connection between this lack of jealousy in me, this lack of envy, just as an impulse, just as a faculty. Again, it's not a moral issue for me. Maybe there's something connecting that to how I regard fame and how alien it seems to me the people who are really chasing fame. Now here I've got to put in a caveat. If you guys watch my YouTube channel and you think I'm doing this to get famous, I completely understand why you would think that about me. I mean, a lot of my videos are very boring lectures. They're morality lectures. In a lot of ways, what I'm doing in these videos is similar to what I would have been doing as a Buddhist monk if I had stayed on that career path. I also could have been a great rabbi. And in some ways maybe it's similar to stand-up comedy. But, if you stick around, I think if you keep watching the videos, I think you will come to understand that no, this stuff is not motivated by a quest for fame. And there's a sense in which I really don't even understand what other people are doing when they're motivated by, when they're turned on by the possibility of fame, whether that's a little bit of fame or a lot of fame. I mean, the fame thing, apparently, it seems like gambling. A compulsive gambler can be turned on by, can be excited by a little bit of money or a lot of money. There's something about the chance itself. There's something about the nature of gambling that, maybe the scale doesn't matter so much, whether it's $5 or $50 or $500, that captivates them. I think for a lot of these people, it doesn't matter if they're only famous to 200 people. That completely captivates them. Perhaps as much as 2,000 or 2 million. We'll never know. A lot of these people are never going to get up to those larger numbers. Again, I mean, there must be... What is jealousy? jealousy has to start from a certain kind of sympathy. It has to start from understanding the position that I'm in and the position that you're in and the difference between them and some kind of dynamic connection between them. And then obviously there's a desire to either destroy the other person or elevate yourself. I guess the root of it is that one person feels diminished by the other person's success or greatness or attractiveness, any positive quality in the other person. There's a sense of a loss of one's own identity in recognizing the other person's identity. And let's say I don't have that at all. I can't even once remember in childhood. I can never remember feeling bad because someone else was more handsome than me. I can never remember feeling bad because someone else was smarter than me. I can never remember feeling bad, not even once, not even as a small child, feeling bad because someone else was better than I was at sports. Never. And I think obviously that must be a very natural human impulse. I mean, it must be something that motivates people to try to be smarter and more beautiful and better at sports. I mean, it must, if you scale it up to the millions of people forming our society as a whole, presumably it has very many positive effects on people's lives, you know? So I guess also maybe even the name itself, like words like jealousy and envy, maybe those are bad categories to use because they lead us to focus entirely on the negative aspect of the pattern of behavior, of this way of seeing the world, whatever it is, unnamed and, you know, to me, kind of unknowable. You know, just to give one example, I think there are a lot of people who will never get it. And it's fine, I'm not complaining, but they'll never understand that for me, subjectively, when I disagreed with Unnatural Vegan about castration of dogs, that really was about castration of dogs, that really was about domestication of animals for me. You know, there were a bunch of other issues bundled up in that, including even my history with Buddhism, a bunch of other, between her and myself, there were a bunch of other issues that ended up being part of the controversy. But for me, it really was about those issues. First and foremost, the domestication of animals, castration of dogs, killing cows to feed beef to our cats, etc., that set of issues. That really was what I cared about. That really was what I wanted to speak on. And for me, it was not in any way motivated by fame or by, you know, wanting to denigrate her. But I completely understand that for the vast majority of people seeing this, they'll never be able to see it the way I see it. And I guess that's just okay. I continue to make comments, you know, defending Unnatural Vegan, because even though I'm a critic of her work in some respects, of course I appreciate it in others, which you've heard me say on this channel. Both are completely sincere. I wrote a comment here I'm going to read out. This is a comment on YouTube, but it was a comment made to someone who is, to be blunt, a complete idiot, and in his replies he made it clear that he had no interest in such thing. But anyway, just a couple days ago, on November 8th, I wrote this comment, which I'll now just read. So this is a comment defending Unnatural Vegan against someone who had just been, you know, insulting her, frankly, offering a criticism that I think has no validity. Anyway, quote, "You seem to be unaware that Unnatural Vegan and I are at opposite extremes of the vegan spectrum." Sorry, digression. So he was also talking about me and Unnatural Vegan as if we're members of the same team, as if we're on the same side. So I opened by saying, you seem to be unaware we're actually at opposite extremes in some ways. I disagree with her, and believe me, on à-bas-le-ciel, I've had some very strongly worded disagreements with her. But I think you start on a false footing by claiming that she's quote-unquote not vegan. She's a real vegan, but she's a vegan you happen to disagree with. Is she an idiot? Well, on some topics that I care about, she has definitely been idiotic. Plenty of people adore her, but I think they just have different interests from myself. saying that she and I both feel overly confident in our opinions isn't actually a valid criticism. You really need to take the next step to show that we're confident about things we ought not to be confident about. Do you know more than me about Cambodia? About First Nations? I doubt it. Do you know more than Unnatural Vegan about Splenda or about pesticides? I doubt it. Different people are confident about different things. Saying that you feel intimidated by that confidence is just an extremely weak line for you to take, although you seem to mistake that weakness for strength. So I'm saying to him that he mistakes his own weakness for strength. So, I don't know. It's probably not worth my explaining how it is this comment relates to what I've just been reflecting on at any great length. But, to me, I do see people attacking other YouTubers with a sense of, who do you think you are? Don't you know who I think I am? And a sense of jealousy. I think it is jealousy that someone else displays confidence, and including Unnatural Vegan here, of attacking her for being overly confident. And on the other hand, to use the same example with Unnatural Vegan, I think many people are drawn to her and become her fans precisely because she shows a certain kind of self-effacing lack of confidence. She often has kind of bumbling, informal videos. I watched one recently where she was talking about which shampoo she uses. It's of absolutely no interest to me. Sorry, I'm not criticizing, I'm not saying it's wrong or bad, but obviously a lot of people enjoyed seeing her in this kind of bumbling, self-effacing, and very humble way, talking about shampoo, but to me it's boring stuff. But I think, it's some kind of insecurity that, again, I don't relate to, that people look at Unnatural Vegan and think she's smug, that she's too confident, that she acts like an expert. And on a lot of these things, again, I happen to disagree with her passionately about some topics I really care about. But I think in some cases, she did a lot of research on Splenda, on artificial sweeteners. I think she's entitled to speak with real confidence on that, given that she did the research, even if she's wrong or even if you happen to disagree with her. I don't react to it in that way at all. I think she did a lot of research on some pesticides. She made some videos talking about pesticides and use of genetically modified crops. Why wouldn't she speak with this kind of confidence on that, And yeah, on the other hand, I see people wanting to lash out at figures they feel are too confident, etc., etc. And I guess, on the other hand, the lashing out itself is just justified by the same, I think, ultimately jealous impulse. On the one hand, to try to abase others and at the same time to exalt yourself in the pursuit of this micro fame, So I'm in the middle of all that. And people today, just now again, people accused me of being jealous of Charles, of Vegan Cheetah. And there were both shallow and profound ways in which they'll never understand how unimaginable that is to me. It's not just the case that I do not wish I had Charles's life. I can't imagine being a person who wished they had Charles's life. It's not just that I don't envy him. On a really deep level, I can't even really understand what envying him would be like. Because I honestly think I've never envied anyone. And, I don't know. It may just be a disability.